Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining the Modern Workplace Partner Technical Community Call. Pretty excited about the topic that we have today, Windows Analytics. But first, want to take care of some logistical things. Want to make sure that everyone is able to hear my audio okay. So if you're able to hear me, if you could type in the message window whether you had what you had to drink this morning, whether it was tea, coffee, water, orange juice, apple juice. Oh, just give me an idea. All right, great. I'm seeing some messages come in. So it's good to know that everyone's able to hear me. I myself am a coffee person, so had plenty of that this morning. I do want to let you know that this call is being recorded, so if you have an issue with being recorded, this would be a good time to drop. No worries, because we will be posting the presentation to our Yammer community right after the call, and we will also be posting the call recording to our YouTube channel in a day or two. So I've included the link to our Yammer community in the message window, and then you'll be able to actually ask questions throughout the presentation today through the message window as well. We'll get those answered during breaks in the presentation. Before we get kicked off with Windows Analytics, I did want to cover a couple slides just to let you know about the technical communities that are available to U.S. partners through the One Commercial Partner Organization. We have different solution areas that host a monthly call, and each one of those has a Yammer community associated with it. So Modern Workplace is the one that you're on today, but Business Applications also hosts their call every second Tuesday, and Applications and Infrastructure hosts their call every third Friday. Data and AI, they kick things off monthly with the first Friday, and Open Source Solutions has their call every fourth Friday. Modern Workplace resources that we are in charge of include upcoming partner training that you can find through this link listed here, the Yammer community, which I mentioned, which we'll post the presentation to right after the call, our call registration sign up page, and then our community blog. Normally we will post a blog to actually advertise and talk about the content that will be covered in our upcoming monthly call. Lastly, one that's not listed here is our YouTube channel for the call recording. I'll post that link in the message window, but it's aka.ms/MW call recording. So easy to remember there. So I just want to remind everyone, if any questions come up during the presentation, please post them in the message window, and then we'll be able to answer them during breaks in the presentation. So without further ado, I want to get to our topic of the day, Windows Analytics, and introduce Mark Shepard.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to talk to you today about Windows Analytics, give you an overview of the value prop and requirements for deploying it. So Windows Analytics, the mission of Windows Analytics is to provide data-driven insights to help you deploy, service, and support Windows 10, or sometimes we call it Get Current, and Stay Healthy. It consists of 3 solutions written by 3 different teams with 3 different bits of domain expertise. The Upgrade Readiness solution is all about helping you plan your upgrade to the latest version of Windows 10 by overcoming app and driver compatibility issues. And it was created by the app and driver compatibility team, who knows quite a bit about how to do this effectively because they do it for Microsoft and sharing their secret sauce with IT. The update compliance is all about once you land on Windows 10, the different what we call feature updates in Windows 10. They used to be called upgrades. They go out of scope after 18 months. So are your devices on an in-scope version of Windows 10? Do you have the latest security update deployed? Those kinds of things. So it's staying current once you're on Windows 10. And device health, well, and update compliance was written by the servicing team. So they're experts at deploying new versions of Windows, and they're sharing their secret sauce. Device health is IT's worst fear isn't not being up to date. It's rolling out an update and then having that cause end user problems like OS crashes or app crashes or other problems. So device health helps IT proactively identify and remediate those kinds of top end user impacting issues so that they can be fixed, therefore lowering support costs and improving end user productivity. So we're trying to go to a more general motion of data-driven insights to get current and stay current. In the past, people have typically done ad hoc manual processes to figure out what inventory, what apps and drivers they have on their devices in order to do compatibility testing. The idea with analytics is let us just collect that for you automatically. Windows already collects that information, just use it. Then people typically would do an exhaustive full test pass on all of their apps. And the idea is the analytics data can help do some data-driven prioritization to rationalize which apps should be tested and by how much and how. And we'll talk about that. In the past, people have done image-based deployments, but image-based deployments are a real pain in the ass because the problem isn't so much managing the images, it's managing the drivers that are needed for each model. And the way OEMs ship their devices, they already have the right drivers on them. So why not just use those drivers and deploy the upgrades as in-place upgrades using Intune or SCCM? Overall, those are tactics. Overall, we're trying to help people move from a green button model, which is how people do upgrades today, which is analyze, test, validate, and then finally roll out. And it's a many long months process. We want to help people move to what we call the red button model, which is how people typically deploy security updates today, where the update goes out to a small group of machines, and then a bit later it goes out everywhere. It's an automated process that's already set up ahead of time, but IT can hit the red button if they see a problem along the way. So we want to get to the point where upgrades can be deployed as a red button model. We're not going to require it, but we want to enable it. And there's a bunch of things we can do on the analytics side to facilitate that, some of which we built, some of which we still need to build, and we'll talk about those in more detail later. But that's the common theme. So Windows Analytics data flow, we consider ourselves to be IT admin for consumers. So we collect telemetry data or diagnostic data in our diagnostic service. It automatically flows up to the Microsoft Cloud, and we use it to figure out whether when we release OSs and apps and drivers, we want to know a couple of things. One is, did they land successfully? Right? Did the download, install, restart all happen? And if not, what were the errors so that we can fix the errors? Then after it's landed, just as importantly, we want to know, did they have the right level of quality, health, and compatibility after they've been installed? And we pull back the data to figure out, is it all looking okay? And if so, we can open up throttles more. And if there are problems, we will create a patch. So that's how we use it. But when we talk to IT pros, they say, we also want to deploy OSs, apps, and drivers, and we also want to make sure that they land properly and have the right level of quality, health, and compatibility. So the idea of Windows Analytics is, why don't we share a subset of our diagnostic data with IT, an IT-focused subset that helps them lower the cost to deploy, service, and support Windows 10. So that's the concept. At the end of the day, we give IT ultimate control over if they want to share telemetry data or not. If they share, then they get the benefit of analytics, otherwise they don't. After I show this deck to most customers, they always say, this is friggin' amazing. I can't believe how great these insights are and how much value they provide. it obviously adds value for me in terms of reducing the total cost of ownership. What's the catch? Why are you not charging any extra money for this? And the answer is, our strategy isn't to monetize this. Our strategy is, first of all, by IT keeping the telemetry pipe open, it helps us get insights into how our devices are doing, which is good for us, because it'll help us make the product better. And we view this tool as the most important tool to help customers get current and stay current with Windows 10. And so we want to give the tool away because the more customers that are current, the better it is for Windows and our whole ecosystem. And one of the primary mechanisms for us to scale out is via partners. So to the point that partners can help us with the scale out motion, all the better. There are tons of really interesting opportunities for partners to participate in this, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. We've only been out for a very short period of time. It's been just a bit over a year since upgrade readiness went general availability, and device health and update compliance have only been general availability for about 6 months. And yet we've got actually many, many millions of devices enrolled already, customer devices, with an exponential growth curve. We've got thousands of customers across hundreds of countries. So this isn't one of those, oh boy, this is a new shiny penny, look what we're building. This is actually something we've been building, investing heavily in innovating at a very rapid pace, and customers have been loving it, and the adoption's very strong. So I'm going to give you a quick demo. First, I want to show you in log analytics. So let me show you I have all these slides in this deck. Oh, by the way, this deck that I'm walking you through, I've released to the tech community, so you can grab it yourself. And it has all everything I'm going to demo is in the slide deck. I use the slide deck as basically as my backup, in case I don't have internet or something. But first thing you do is you create this thing called an OMS workspace, and under connected sources, Windows telemetry, you see there's this thing in there called a commercial ID. It's just a GUID. So I created this workspace. It's got a GUID in it. Big deal. Well, that GUID identifies the workspace. How do I know which devices to route their data to that workspace? Well, there's a bunch of options. The one that most people use is group policy. So if you go to data collection and preview builds, you'll see that there's a group policy option to configure the commercial ID. So you just take the workspace commercial ID and you put it here, and on the device, you deploy it via group policy, and now your devices are all reporting to that workspace. It doesn't have to just be group policy. We also support mobile device management policies through OMADM, and we also have a deployment script that lets you just set it locally as a preference. So after you do that, you have to wait. Unfortunately, the waiting time is a little bit long. It's a couple of days because our latency is a little bit higher than we would like. But that's something we're going to work on. We'll talk about that in the futures. We're working on actively now. And then you wait a couple of days, and then bam, you're filled up with your workspace is filled up with the 3 solutions, and you see a bunch of data. Let's talk about upgrade readiness first. It's the one that's been around the longest, and people seem to like this one the most because with Windows 7 coming to near the end of extended support, people are in a mad scramble to do the porting. Looks like my demo workspace is not loading properly, which is why it's great to have these backup slides. So let me just show you the backup slides for this. Hold on a second. So in upgrade readiness, there's the target OS version, so you can select which target OS version you want to upgrade to. In this case, I've picked 1703, but you could also pick 1809 or 1709 or the soon-to-be released 1804. And after you've chosen your OS version, the next step is to identify your important apps. Most enterprises have way more apps than they want to do compatibility testing, and we help with the app rationalization. The first step is we triage most apps that are installed on less than 2% of devices. We put them in this low install count bucket so that they can largely be ignored for the rest of the flow unless there's a known compatibility issue. And then the other ones, what's left, have to be reviewed. Now, it's possible that some of these low install count apps really are important to you, in which case you could change the app importance and say, no, this really is important. And it's possible some of the ones that are installed on more than 2% of your devices really aren't important to you, and you can change that as well. How can you change it? Well, if you click through, we give you this grid control that shows you the apps, and we'll give you a bunch of signals. We'll say what percent of devices have it installed. We'll tell you usage, so you can see if anyone's actually using the app. Maybe no one's using it, I don't care, I mark it not important. Or maybe it's only installed on less than 2% of devices, but on those devices it's heavily used. Therefore, maybe I'm going to mark this as important for me. So that's the first step in rationalization, is just figuring out which apps you care about so you don't have to think about the 30,000 long tail. Then the next set is we'll tell you if there are known driver or app compatibility issues. We actually have a database that we collect from 1 billion Windows devices on app compatibility problems. And what we'll do is, for your inventory that we discover, we'll join it against the known compatibility database and tell you if any of your apps or drivers have known issues, and if there's a fix available, or if there's any mitigations we're aware of, like uninstalling and reinstalling or moving to a later version. So that's the second step in app rationalization. And for a lot of people that we talk to, this is really gold because this is bringing in data from outside your org. The next step is to review low-risk apps and drivers. In this case, we know we have a program called Ready for Windows where ISVs can give us a support statement to say whether or not they support their app on your target OS version. If so, we'll let you know, and this way maybe you don't need to test that app as thoroughly because the ISV's already says it's supported. We'll also let you know if it's highly adopted or just well adopted outside your org. So if it's on 100,000 machines on your target OS version, or on 10,000 machines outside your OS version, and we haven't seen any major problems, we'll let you know. And again, this way, maybe you don't need to test it as thoroughly. So those are the low-risk apps, which is the next bit in our rationalization process. Finally, of the assets that you have not marked as ready yet, we show you the order in which we suggest that you tackle them. The idea is, well, this is the most installed app first, and then the next most installed, and the next most installed. So if you do them in install order, you'll unblock as many devices as possible. So we consider a device ready to upgrade if all the assets, if all the apps and drivers on it are marked as ready. So this is the order in which you should tackle the assets in order to unblock the devices. And we'll also tell you, by the way, if you go through the next 9, that'll unblock 10% of your devices. If you go through the next 142, that'll unblock 80%. Why 10 and 80%? We thought 10% is typical for companies to do a pilot, and 80% is typical for companies to do a production rollout. So those are the next bits of app rationalization. And that's most of the flow. We have a little bit more I'm just going to highlight quickly. One is we can show you which devices are eligible to deploy. So we'll show you which devices won't upgrade because they have at least one asset on them, one app or driver that's marked as blocking. Either we found a known compatibility problem or you've marked it as blocked from your testing. And then some are ready to upgrade, meaning every asset is good. Some are in progress, meaning some are good and some assets are still being validated. You can click through here and export that list of assets to import to your management tool of choice, because you're going to use a management tool at the end of the day to do the upgrade. If you're using SCCM 1606 or later, you don't actually need to export and do that because SCCM already knows how to integrate with analytics, find the set of devices that are ready to upgrade, and from there you can create a collection of devices that are ready and then target the OS to it. If you want to see readiness status by subsets of devices, you can do that as well. You can create a group in Azure Log Analytics or multiple groups, and we'll show you the status broken out by groups. If there are any driver issues, device manager issues on devices after the upgrade, we'll let you know. You can drill down for failure. So this is monitoring. This is a little bit of post upgrade. So we've already gone through the upgrade phase. After you started to upgrade devices, if there's any user feedback that folks are giving Microsoft, we could share those with you on the upgraded devices. Office add-ins, we'll tell you which Office add-ins are the most installed in case you want to do compat testing on Office add-ins. There's a separate opt-in for site discovery, in which case we can gather which websites are most used in IE. It's only for IE. On your down-level devices, and then this way, in case you want to use that to inform web compatibility testing. So that's the upgrade readiness solution. Update compliance is update compliance. Once you land on Windows 10, it'll show you in a nutshell. Tell me how am I up to date, and are there any problems? So, for example, if you got an out of support OS version, it'll tell you. If you're missing multiple security updates, it'll tell you. Multiple security updates is a problem, remember, because in Windows 10 the model is cumulative updates. So if you're missing multiple security updates, you're at least a month behind in your security. Something that was added fairly recently is delivery optimization. So Windows 10 has a native peer caching capability that allows devices to download updates from each other instead of from Windows Update. So if you're using Windows Update directly or Windows Update for Business rather than SCCM, this is an important option to reduce network load. Up until now, there's never been any analytics to show you how effective it is, or how, if you change things, has my caching rate gone up or down? Now we have that with delivery optimization. The next one is device health. So with device health, we'll show you which devices are crashing the most. So for most IT shops, very few % of devices crash. But of the ones that do crash, you'll see a spike. Well, there'll be a few that are crashing all the time, and most that are crashing, maybe once, maybe twice. So in this case, you see Barbara's machine has crashed 241 times in the last couple of weeks. That one probably needs to be replaced or re-imaged. The interesting thing is you can actually see how your crash rate compares to commercial average, and you can slice and dice. So, for example, if I want to see so if I want to actually compare, in this case, I have 473 devices have crashed in the last 2 weeks out of 5,000. So it's about 8% of my devices have crashed, 9%. If I want, I can see how that compares to typical commercial average, and I can slice and dice by OS version or by model. So I can say, how are my Surface Books doing? How are my Dells doing? How are things doing on 1709 compared to other releases? I can also find out which drivers are causing the most crashes, because generally speaking, IT doesn't want to fix things on a per device basis. They want to fix whole classes of issues. And this way I can say this device is causing 50 devices to crash in the last 2 weeks, maybe, and then you click through and you can find better alternative versions of the driver that you may want to deploy instead. The idea is SCCM is not easy to deploy the latest versions of drivers, but by showing you the ones that are the biggest problems, then alternative versions, you can take a more targeted approach. So that's what we got in terms of, I should mention one last thing about the driver health. We actually use this internally, like our own Microsoft IT department. The top crashing driver when we built out device health analytics was this Intel graphics driver, and it was crashing over 3,000 devices every 2 weeks. They used device health to find a better version of the driver, rolled out the newer version, and it reduced the crashes by quite a bit. So we know that this is effective. We have, what else can I tell you? A little bit about privacy, because this is actually the main stumbling block for analytics adoption. So this is the one that needs to be done early with customers. So let me do a more elaborate version of the data flow diagram. So remember I said that the Windows devices send telemetry to our diagnostics service. That's hosted in the US data centers. And remember I said IT Pro sets up an analytics workspace. When they set up the analytics workspace, they can set it up in any region. Those are geolocated. After they've set up in their region of choice, they get the commercial ID from the analytics workspace, they deploy it to the device. And then this way we know that device should have its data go to that analytics workspace. Then once a day, we do this thing called the daily snapshot processing, where we cook an IT-focused subset of our data for analytics. We copy it to this transient storage, which is also hosted in the US data center, and from there we copy it to log analytics. So this storage just holds data for a couple of weeks, just long enough to make sure we got it transferred over, because it's more effective to bulk transfer this way. And then that's pretty much the story mostly. For device health and upgrade compliance, that's the story. For upgrade readiness, there's some user input as well. IT doesn't just get a report, they can actually mark an app as ready or not ready, and they can set the target OS version. So when they write those things, we actually put that in the storage here, and then that's used to copy back insights. So that's a little bit more detail of the data flow, and I just wanted this as context for the privacy stuff. So for privacy, at the end of the day, IT controls the diagnostic level of data they're willing to share. We require basic, but more things light up at enhanced. We'll talk about what lights up at enhanced in a bit. Windows 10 1709 added a new policy to limit enhanced diagnostics to the minimum required by Windows Analytics. So this way, if you want to go to the to full functionality, you can go to enhanced without sharing everything in enhanced, with just sharing a small subset. Transparency, we fully document Windows Analytics diagnostic events for review with your company's compliance team. And this is something for new customers or partners onboarding new customers that we recommend doing early in the process. So I think generally they'll like what we provide. Based on our adoption curve, I can say most customers are okay with it, but this is one of those things that people are wary of, so it's good to start those conversations early. We've also added a diagnostic data viewer tool for the new version of Windows that we're just about to roll out. It's a store app, and it lets you see the device's diagnostic data, what's actually sent up in nicely formatted JSON. Only works on the version of Windows that we're just about to send out. So if you have an insider build, you could try it now, and if you don't have an insider build, just wait. It should be released any moment now, if it's not already. Security, we use SSL and certificate pinning when we transfer diagnostic data from the device to our cloud, so it's tamper-proof. Certificate pinning means we only accept root certs, SSL certs that were Microsoft signed, so people can't get in the middle. And then trust, we actually support Microsoft Online Services terms. There's a whole bunch of, so I say, interesting thing is go over these principles with customers first, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff, resources in the resource slide that you want to throw at them as well, and I'll show you those in a bit. So one question is, can analytics be used without a direct client connection to the Microsoft diagnostic endpoint? So in other words, the client's not sending the data up directly, and the answer is no. That's not something we're planning on doing, not something we support now, not something we're planning on doing in the future. The other is, can I pick the data center location? And the answer here is yes for Azure Log Analytics, but currently no for the diagnostic cloud. This is different than the previous answer in that the previous answer is like no, not now, and it's not on our plans. This one is just no, not now. We actually do want to enable the diagnostic data sent up to be geolocated. It's just that it's a bunch of work. So we've started the design and the implementation of that work, but it's going to take us a while to get there. That's privacy. So what are the per solution requirements? So most everything for basic, you can get basic upgrade readiness, and update compliance works fully at basic. But upgrade readiness adds some things if you go to enhanced. Windows 10 app usage, which can help when planning from Windows 10 to Windows 10 upgrades. You can see which apps are used the most, is helpful. And IE site discovery insights on Windows 10 for web compatibility input, those require enhanced. And device health requires enhanced all up. And enhanced, we don't document all the enhanced events. There are just too many of them. We don't even know them all. So we added this policy in 1709 to limit enhanced to just the ones needed by Windows Analytics. Those ones are fully documented and pretty scoped. So a lot of people who are worried about sharing telemetry won't move to enhanced until 1709. But at 1709, it's pretty easy to move there. License requirements for upgrade readiness and update compliance. There's nothing in particular you need. Just use them, have fun, enjoy. Device health, we require just a basic enterprise subscription, like an E3 license or better. We don't enforce it or require it per seat. It's just that if you have 100 devices, we ask that you have 100 licenses. Not you can have one of those devices be pro. We don't care. It's just that you have 100 total licenses. And this is E3, meaning like software assurance. Just a subscription enterprise license. A lot of people ask, wait a second, Windows Analytics is on Azure Log Analytics, and I see Azure Log Analytics has a free tier, which has a 500 megabyte per day cap, and it's got a paid tier, which charges money per gigabyte ingested. So how can you say Windows Analytics is free? And the reason is because Windows Analytics is 0 rated within Azure Log Analytics. So if you're on the free tier of Azure Log Analytics that has 500 megabyte per day upload cap, our data doesn't count against that cap. You can ingest as much Windows Analytics data as you want, and you'll still have 500 megabytes of data left for additional ingestion. If you're on one of the paid tiers, you can ingest as much Windows Analytics data as you want. You won't get charged for it. If you ingest other data from other log analytics solutions, you would get charged for it at their regular rate. And everything runs on Windows 10. Upgrade readiness is the only one that runs down level, and of course it needs to run down level to help you plan to get to Windows 10. For Windows Analytics deployment steps, it's all well documented. The main point here is have the privacy review early. Tons of stuff that's new. I mean, I just showed you a ton of stuff that we have, but I just want to give you an idea of the scope of the rate of innovation. So we just, in upgrade readiness, we just released reporting on Spectre meltdown compliance, and that was just done in February. In update compliance, I showed you the delivery optimization in that. That was only just released in March. App reliability was just added to device health, where you can see the crashiness of your apps and which app version and OS versions work best together. That was just released in March. And then login health. Within device health, that was also just released in March. So with login health, you can see which login types are my end users actually using. You want to move to a world without passwords, so you want to support PIN and face and all sorts of other stuff. What are your end users actually using? What's their preferred credential? And what's the success rate? Are there top errors that you can go fix and mitigate to create a better login experience for them? Next is I just recently released some draft extensibility SDK docs in case you want to go deeper on analytics beyond what you can do in the UI. And I got a few slides on that I'll show in a bit. But I published that out to the tech community so along with this deck, so you can grab that anytime you want. It supports building custom reports, alerts, data mashup, and if you're a partner, you could enable access to your customer's workspace, and you could do cross-workspace queries to build up multi-tenant reports. Beware that this SDK schema, our vNext product is going to actually make some breaking changes. It won't break you all of a sudden. We're going to have the two live side by side for a fairly long period of time. But I'm just saying this is a caveat so that you're prepared that if you do use the SDK and extensibility docs, that you know that you'll have to port your queries forward, that we're not going to be back compat forever for this version. There's another thing that's in the hopper called Application Health Analytics Analyzer, and this is a tool that lets you scan local line of business apps and assess their risk. So we'll look at the APIs they call to basically be able to tell whether they are high risk based on which APIs they're calling. And that's very useful for line of business or repackaged apps, which device health, which upgrade readiness normally don't know anything about. For LOB or repackaged apps, upgrade readiness can help walk you through the compatibility workflow, but it won't know ahead of time, oh, this one's going to be a problem because it's calling these APIs, whereas the health analyzer can help you do that. What are we trying to do in the future? We're working on our vNext, and I'll just give you an idea of the kinds of things we're working on next. One is, right now we're supporting, focused on deploying, servicing, and supporting Windows 10. We'd like to do the same thing for Office Pro Plus. We have some integration with SCCM. I mentioned that SCCM can integrate with analytics to know which devices are ready to upgrade and therefore do the upgrade. We're working on much deeper integration with them for both deploying analytics and remediating problems and syncing groups. We're working on reducing the latency. Our current latency is a bit over 2 days, which is too high. We want to get things down to a day for typical cases and to actually have some things much faster than that. We want to help operationalize device rings. So the idea here is, let's suppose I've gone through this workflow and I've said which apps are important and which ones are not important. Well, if you already know which ones are important, most IT pros create a pilot ring and then a production ring, or maybe several pilot rings. We can help you with analytics to let you know whether your pilot ring has enough of your important assets in it that you're actually going to get the right coverage before you move out to production. That's one of the things that you need to do to fully move to the red button model. So, to move all the way to the red button model, there's a few other things that are a little further ahead on our queue. In terms of resources, the privacy ones are the big ones I just wanted to call out, which is the first one is all sorts of information about turning on diagnostics and our trust process. The next three are details of what data we collect on various versions of Windows. And so that one's super important to review. We have the diagnostic data viewer tool that we just recently released. We have our licensing terms and documentation. These are the promises we make to customers about how we collect data. And then we also have promises we make about how data is secured in our data centers. So definitely good to go over that first. We have a new Windows Analytics community, which this deck is on, and the extensibility docs are on. Speaking of the extensibility docs, I do want to mention the extensibility. So a lot of people want to move beyond just what we show in the UI. Even though we show a ton of stuff in the UI, which is actually very useful, it turns out all the data in the UI is powered by this underlying data store, which is called Kusto. So Azure Log Analytics uses this thing called Kusto behind the scenes, which is technology that we invented at Microsoft. It came from our Israel Development Center. It's actually the same technology that's behind App Insights and a whole bunch of other stuff. Azure Log Analytics is the first time that it's being made available for public to use. It's really a great language and great query engine. It's similar to sort of Hadoop and Azure Data Lakes, except for it's somewhere, it's a tweener. It's faster than them. So while it can do batch processing, it can also do stuff sort of interactively, but it's not as expensive as Spark. So it's got that tweener node. So it's actually pretty useful. And once you know the query language, you can do a whole bunch more than what we show in the UI. You can build custom reports, you can generate alerts, and you can join with other data sets. You can integrate into your existing tools with workflows. So the Draft SDK, which we just released to the tech community, just builds on the Kusto docs, the Azure Log Analytics docs, saying here's our query language and here's our engine, and then we just provide what's our schema and some sample queries so you get an idea how to use it. I mentioned earlier the caveat that our schema is going to change, so prepare to move stuff forward. Also, Azure Log Analytics itself has data limits. The data limits used to be quite small, like you couldn't query more than 5,000 chunks of data at a time. Now it's much larger. You can go over 100,000. So Log Analytics is not optimized for pulling all the data out. It's optimized for doing the queries in Azure Log Analytics. And then pulling out summaries. So that's the recommended use pattern. So a lot of people stumble against that, but just wanted to make that clear. Lots of ways of building custom reports once you know the language. You can just throw it into Advanced Analytics portal and it'll have some default charts. You can put it in the Power BI and do a whole bunch of stuff there. Basically, you run any query you want. You can click the Power BI button, and it'll show you how to export that to Power BI, where you can make really rich controls. Although pulling stuff into Power BI is a little bit slow. I prefer the Advanced Analytics portal myself. It's got this thing called View Designer that's got some limited controls you can use, a little bit prettier than what's in the Advanced Analytics portal. Or you can just use the API to pull in data. Partners can enable access to their customers' workspace and use cross-workspace queries. Alerts are really just queries. I can always set up, something that says, boy, if I've got more than, 100 crashes, you give it a query. Maybe I have the query, what percent of devices are crashing. I say if it goes over 10%, send me an email or run some automation. And then if you want to join other data with Windows Analytics data, that can be done in a couple of different ways. One is you can ingest the other data into OMS, into Azure Log Analytics, and do the query there. The other is you can export summaries to some external place like Power BI or Azure Data Lakes and do the queries there. But if you're exporting summaries, beware, you're only exporting their data limits. So what else do I want to say? We have a bunch of resources for this in the tech community for the extensibility stuff. We have all the decks I just showed you in the tech community. And also, we recently just released sort of a how-to guide for partners for sort of how to use analytics for customer engagements. And I'll share those links with you afterwards as well. It's called the, what's it called? I can't remember the name of it. But we actually have ready-made content for partners to use analytics with customers as is. And it has the pitch that you can make to them. So the pitch is, generally pretty simple. It's like, hey, look, we're going to help you get analytics on. And once you've got your analytics deployed, it's going to make your life better. But it turns out it can also make the partner's life better, because using analytics, you can find a lot of upsell opportunities, like devices that are about to end of life, or other opportunities to sort of help upsell and help your customer. So that's all I got. Any questions?
Hey, thanks, Mark. Don't have any questions. The one question that did come in was basically about the links to the technical community, and I've actually posted the presentation on the Yammer community, and that will contain all the links that were shown here today. But
yeah, I want to make sure that you also have the link to the to MyAnk's partner stuff. So I'll send that to you separately.
Okay, great. But what I'll do is I'll also post it in this window here as well.
Let me see. Yeah, it's going to take me a while to dig to find it.
Yeah. If there's any other questions, please post them in the message window. Okay, looks like some other ones have come in.
I don't see anything.
Okay. Application health will be part of one of the other tools like upgrade readiness, or will it be separate?
Application health is part of device health.
Right, device health. Okay.
Or it's called application reliability. So device health has OS reliability, app reliability, WIP app learning, and login health. Those four.
Okay. Here's another question. What is the difference between the info in UR, upgrade readiness, and in Office telemetry?
What's the difference between in Office telemetry?
Yes, what is the difference between the info in UR and in Office telemetry?
I have no idea what Office telemetry is.
Okay. See, Dave, if you...
the other one is called the Microsoft 365 Powered Device Assessment Kit. So I just put a link in the IM window, but I'm worried that I'm looking at a different IM window than you, since you're seeing messages I don't see.
Okay, I'll take it from that and convert it over.
Okay.
The next one, I think you touched on this one briefly earlier.
Oh, if the Office Analytics one that people were thinking about is the there's one Office Analytics product which is geared towards showing you how Office apps are used by your most effective employees. I can't remember the name of that product. It's called, but it's not about deploying, servicing, and supporting new versions of Windows or Office. That's what we're working on. The Office Analytics product, whose name escapes me, is really geared towards how to get people to more effectively, the habits of highly effective people, essentially. It'll tell you things like, wow, your most productive employees have at least 1 2-hour block of thinking time in the course of the day and have more connections to their customers or more this and that, the other things. And apparently a lot of customers have found that incredibly useful, but it's very different scope of what we're doing, which is all about deployment. I don't know if that answered your question, that previous question. All right, what was the next one?
Last one here. Are there any details on the cost of this?
Yes, there's lots of details on the cost. The cost is $0, and it's spelled out very clearly in the. I wrote an FAQ fairly recently on Windows Analytics, and I put a ton of details in there. I'll throw that in the IM window, the FAQ URL. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Windows Analytics is 0 rated within Azure Log Analytics. So the cost is the cost is 0. It doesn't cost you anything within Azure Log Analytics, and then upgrade compliance and upgrade readiness don't require any particular Windows license. Device health does require an E3 license, or at least that you have enough E3 licenses for the number of devices you want to monitor. So those are our total requirements, and I think that was in one of the slides in the deck, and it's spelled out in the FAQ.
Okay. Thanks. Let me grab that and post it. And regarding the Power Device Assessment Kit, I definitely had some links for that too on the most recent blog on Windows Analytics.
Great. This has actually been the most fun project I've worked on since I've been at Microsoft. I've been here 19 years. I'm just going to put that out there just because the amount of exec sponsorship for this project is just so great. It's like we're getting all the resources we want so we can move rapid innovation. And then we show it to customers. They just love it. I mean, the amount of positive feedback we got. And, you know, a lot of the stuff is actually fairly easy for us because it's just moving data from point A to point B, because a lot of this is just taking the internal insights we already use ourselves and exposing an IT-focused subset. But yet there's tons of opportunities in this for doing sort of more advanced sort of machine learning to sort of help people move to the red button model that's going to keep us busy and interested for a couple of years. So it's really just a fun space to work in, and I hope you all enjoy the product as much as we've enjoyed building it.
I appreciate that. It looks like I got some follow-up on that Office telemetry. It's like recently Microsoft announced the Readiness Toolkit for Office, RTO, which helps you with your Office VBA macro and add-in compatibility. It can be configured to scan in numerous ways, including against most recently used documents, folders, and even Office telemetry dashboard, OTT.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so right now, the current product is focused on Windows Analytics, so we're not using the Office stuff per se. You know, an app is an app, and we don't distinguish Office from Adobe. We treat all apps generically. I mentioned earlier that one of the big things that we're doing in the next version that we're building out is we want to have, just like we have a lot of insights to help you deploy, service, and support Windows 10, we also want to add similar insights to deploy, service, and support Office Pro Plus. So in the context of building that out, we're going to be doing a lot more work with I'll call it Office Readiness Toolkit parity. Because Office Readiness Toolkit, in some sense, is an on-prem version of the kind of analytics. And where we're moving to sort of a cloud-based assessment. So I will say, you know, Office Readiness Toolkit, great thing to use for now. You should definitely use it. We're working with the Office team on sort of a cloud version of all of this in our vNext.
All right, thanks. And we have one last question. Is there a release date for Application Health Analytics?
Yeah, release date was a month and a half ago, 3/18.
So it's live now. Okay.
Application Health Analytics is out there now. It's part of Device Health. So you go to, if you're subscribed to Device Health, just open it up and you'll see the App Health blades in there now.
Okay, cool. Well, let's see. Okay, yep. That's all the questions that we have. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you, Mark, for providing that great information over Windows Analytics. Our next call will be May 22nd, I believe. Yes, May 22nd. We'll be covering Windows 10 IoT. So look forward to seeing you there as well.
All righty. Cheers.